Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of MIA Podcast. This week, we've got Tim from Storco. So before we introduce Tim, so a quick reminder what the podcast is all about. Essentially, we are answering this question, will Australian manufacturing ever return to the glory days of the 60s? And we've got some amazing guests which we have on board. So either guests who are directly involved in manufacturing or those who support manufacturing. And the whole point is to educate those who are in manufacturing, maybe on something you weren't aware of before, best practices, or if you're in the general public, just to have an idea of what is happening in manufacturing in Australia and this sort of surge that we're experiencing these days as well. So welcome, Tim.
Lovely to be here.
So Tim, you are from the marketing coordinator at Storco. Do you want to give us just a quick wrap as to what Storco does?
Yeah, you could be forgiven if you'd never heard of Storco before, because as of 6 months ago, neither had I. But it's a specialist manufacturer based out in regional New South Wales. We manufacture partition systems, fit-out systems for self-storage facilities throughout Australia and New Zealand, and occasionally beyond. Mostly it's interior fit-out, but we do slab-up construction every now and again as the job requires it. Interestingly, we're only one of two specialist manufacturers working in that industry in Australia. You get a little bit more of that stuff internationally, but there's really only two big players serving the industry in Australia, and we are, I think, the only one serving the New Zealand market as well. Curiously, it's been around since, I think, 1980 and predates the actual industry body itself, the SSAA.
Is that right? So what's SSAA, just for those who
So the Self-Storage Association of Australia. So it's the peak body representing the self-storage industry's needs throughout Australia and beyond. They cover, I think, Australia, New Zealand, Australasia, so a fair swathe. But yeah, they got started, I believe, in the 90s, whereas Storco has been around in one way, shape or form since the 1980s and still based out in regional Australia.
Excellent. And just so we've got our geography right, whereabouts are you located?
So I am in Orange, which is about 3 hours west of Sydney over the Sandstone Curtain, which is the Great Dividing Range.
Yes. Nice warm part of New South Wales.
Most of the time, yes. Lately, not so much. But yeah, we get our ups and downs.
Yes, absolutely. So look, I'm pretty excited to have you on today because you're apart from obviously us as marketing agency, but our first probably marketer in manufacturing. And I think one of the things that one of the reasons I actually kicked off this podcast was this whole I think this whole concept of marketing is probably deemed as unsexy in manufacturing because everyone wants to go over the glamour and the glitz. My thought process has always been, well, there's some pretty cool products out there. Marketing's sexy anyway. But that whole concept of if the Australian market is going to grow, then we need to have a smart marketing layer on top of it, just to have our voice heard in terms of quality, what we do, speak to the right people, etc. So I think traditionally we've probably had that tall poppy syndrome, where there's been businesses that are just reluctant to market themselves properly. So do you want to just talk a little bit about I guess your broad marketing journey and then just your experience in manufacturing as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been involved in marketing in one way, shape, or form since my career started back in the early 2000s. I got my start doing comms at university, and then from then went into a little agency inside of Newcastle, which is where they really got started with the whole marketing side of things, doing their copywriting of all things. And then after that, it was copywriting, media production for a couple of different businesses for about 5 years before falling into the client side of things, where I started working for a manufacturing firm just outside of Orange here. And I was there for about 4 years before moving on to Storco, where I've been for a little under 6 months now. And it's been a bit of a whirlwind journey. Certainly it's refreshing to hear certainly somebody else say that marketing doesn't quite get the glitz and the glamour that perhaps it deserves. Certainly as somebody who works inside of that industry, it's nice to occasionally get a little bit of a bite of the apple, but it's difficult to compete with the guys who say work in sales, who are pulling in thousands, if not millions of dollars in revenue. It's difficult to compete with that when you're working in marketing and you are seen largely as a cost center instead of a revenue center. But I like to think that because I've got both agency experience and client experience, that I can offer a pretty interesting perspective on what things look like and how they can work from both within in business and how it looks to people who work exterior to that business. Certainly it's helped having engaged in other agencies like your own to have, say, e-commerce and websites built and what have you. It helps to have an understanding of how those agencies work and have a general sense for what is a reasonable ask and what is not. Yeah. And certainly I think, particularly within the manufacturing space, the need for having marketers who understand not only like traditional above the line media, but more below the line stuff and the quiet stuff, particularly the stuff that people don't think about. These are things like automation. Having somebody who on the team who understands that kind of thing, who can help build those lead magnets, who can help foster relationships with clients before they've even come on board, before they've even spoken to sales teams. I think that's really important, particularly these days. Yeah, traditionally, it's always been my understanding, at least, or in my experience, that the perspective is that in B2B and in manufacturing, as much as anything else, that relationships are the core to that sales experience. And of course, you need relationship managers, you need salespeople to foster those relationships. And certainly that's true as much now as it was at any other time. But it's really important these days that sales teams have the tools and the resources available to them in order to foster those relationships, whether that's things like automation that is happening in the background as a result of, say, like digital marketing things that are going on in the background, or whether it's things like resources that those business development guys can actually have on hand. So things like making a webinar run, or even something simple as having a bunch of white papers that you can reference, having things like this podcast that you can talk about that help customers have an understanding of what your business can offer before those sales teams have even gone out and done the traditional pressing of flesh.
Yeah, yeah, I love what you said just there, and I think we've seen this as well. We were just having a discussion with someone a couple of days ago, actually, about that whole thing of just backtracking to where you started. That whole thing of for a lot of businesses, marketing is seen as a cost center, but I think for those who are involved directly in the marketing process, we do see the glamour and glitz of the salespeople pulling in the big the big dollars. But it's like, if we hadn't have given you the resources, your job would have been a lot harder. So it is that I think what we love taking is that whole angle of once you give some metrics around marketing and the reporting side and make it tangible, that's when business owners do start to see, oh, okay, well, this thing is actually important. And I like what you said about that. Salespeople do need the resources to be able to go to market. We were just working with a company recently. Their website was essentially got stripped back to just a homepage for about 12 months. And we've come back in and shown them, we've built a whole bunch of services pages and industry vertical pages for them. And we showed the sales team, and everyone's like this collective gasp, oh my God, like this makes our job so much easier.
Absolutely.
And the automation layers, like exactly what you said, if someone signs up for a form, there's some sort of thing going on in the background that says, here's some emails, nurture emails, or hey, someone's come back to your website and they're looking at your pricing page. Maybe it's time to give them a call, things like that. So
absolutely.
Really, really important.
Yeah. And there's this real challenge I find where there are some aspects of it that are an easy sell. Like, it's easy for people to wrap their head around, we're making a new TV commercial. Oh, cool. You make the thing, you film the thing, and then it goes out and they can see it and they can touch it and they can interact with it. We're running Google ads. Sure. I trust that the Google ads are there. And if I type it up, then surely it'll come up. Sure. But there are things that are invisible, like those automations, where they're essential to the business. Like, you need, if you can map out what that customer journey looks like so that you can have those touch points ready and available at every step along the way so you can nurture that customer as they're moving along the funnel, it's invaluable. But how do you, like, selling that stuff to somebody who doesn't understand what's going on, selling that to someone who can't see the various layers of automation as they happen? Like, why would I bother? I can just send an email. It's like, yeah, but like, think about the number of emails you have to send every day. Think about this. Like, at my previous gig, like, all of the sales was run largely manually, as in the customer would make a call to the salesperson go, yeah, we can do that, and then they would ask them to send through an email through a purchase order to the admin team, who would then vet the order, who would then give that to the design team, who would then vet the order, who would then send that on to production, and and on and on and on. And I was like, this is insane. Like, the number of layers of, like, the number of people every single order has to go through before it even hits production is just insane. It's like, we can automate that, like, we can build a system where the customer creates their own order and it is pre-vetted because they have gone through and they've selected the radio buttons and they've selected the check boxes, and we've visualized what their product is going to look like before they even have to send a purchase order. Like, think of like, that's an average of like maybe like 20 minutes we're saving per order at minimum, and you average that out across the course of a year, and suddenly that's someone's days and weeks and months that you've saved them. But then, like, how do you convincing senior leadership of why that is a valuable thing to do? And to be fair, I don't blame them for looking at it really closely, because if you're in a senior leadership team on a manufacturing firm, your focus is on the product. It's on the thing that you are making, because it is a thing that you can see and you can feel and you can touch. And more often than not, you are there because you personally have experience with manufacturing, that you have seen. Like, you've probably got your start maybe doing some welding, fabrication, steel working, something like that. You have built a business around being able to see and feel and touch. I can see that fabrication is working efficiently. I can see that paint is slowing down. I understand that loading things onto a truck to get them delivered is slowing us down. I understand the fuel inputs and all that kind of stuff. But things that you can't see and feel and touch, things like automations, things like e-commerce, they're a harder sell if you are somebody who doesn't have experience in that space. And part of that is on people like me. Part of that is on people like me being able to sell that as a cost, not as a cost, as a benefit, as a cost saving to the business. But then, even if, from a marketing side of things, those kinds of things can be harder to understand, because I can't speak for anyone else, but in my own experience, it's really easy to learn things like media production. Like, you want to learn how to use Photoshop, you jump onto YouTube and there's endless hours of tutorials of varying quality, but you can figure it out. You can do it yourself. Like, my understanding of the entire Adobe Creative Suite comes basically from on-the-job training. I've taught myself how to use InDesign. I've taught myself how to use Illustrator. I've taught myself how to use Adobe XD, all these things. But then learning the softer things, learning marketing strategy, learning e-commerce, learning automation, these things, they're not sexy, and it's harder to package it up into a 10-minute YouTube video that you can put a bit of a pre-roll ad onto, which means in turn, then it's a harder sell. And because you're not doing it as often, like, nobody turns around in the morning and go, I'm going to build a new e-commerce platform for my B2B manufacturing firm. You do it once, because so help me, if you have to do it more than once, you've done it wrong. So
Absolutely.
these things take time and energy, and you have to be willing to make mistakes along the way, because I don't know about anyone else, but when I rolled out the e-commerce platform for my previous gig, it wasn't something that I'd tried before, and it required so many steps that I hadn't even considered. Like, we had an ERP, an enterprise resource platform. ERP, that's it. Yeah. Enterprise resource planning platform, but it hadn't really been optimized very well. So it meant, in order for me to be able to sell stuff via this e-commerce platform, everything had to go through this taxonomic process of categorizing and tagging every single thing we were selling. And that was maybe 5,000 SKUs. And that's conservative. That's conservative. That's conservative if you're thinking about someone who is working in FMCG, or who is working in fast fashion, where you have one t-shirt can have like 5 different variants just for size. Like
Yeah.
5,000 SKUs is small potatoes by comparison. But when you're working in manufacturing where the average order value is anywhere from thousands to tens of thousands of dollars, it requires having a really strong understanding of how can I categorize our library of products in a way that makes sense to the businesses that are purchasing from us. That stuff takes time, and you have to go through and you have to canvas so many other people inside the business. You have to talk to the people who are working in design, who work in manufacturing, who work in inventory management, who work in logistics, and understand how what you are doing is going to impact them. And in doing so, you have to explain the value to them. Like, hey,
Mm.
I'm going to build a platform that's going to automate like 30% of your workflow. And they're like, why? I get an email, I answer the email. What's the problem? Like, okay. Um, how and part of that is like, again, it comes back to being able to sell the value of what it is you're doing,
Yeah.
which in turn is made even more complicated by the fact that I don't know how it works in metro centers because I've never worked there, but I've only ever worked in regional, which means working in small to medium enterprise, which before this was like 30 people, of which 10 worked in admin, like people like me. And now at Storco, it's about 50 people. Again, it's about half admin people versus people who are actually out on the floor physically making the thing. But it's always been true that no matter where I go, there's always people who have to wear multiple hats. So
Mm.
people like
Mm.
me, who marketing is a really broad umbrella, and it covers strategy development all the way through to making a social media post, which I don't know if anyone knows takes time. Like you can smash it out real quick, but thinking about smashing things out so they come out once a week on the reg and stays current and interesting takes time. Anyway, sidetrack. I'm not the only person who wears multiple hats. Like the people who work in
Yeah.
inventory management and SME wear multiple hats because they have to manage everything from like importing the raw material or the steel and coil and what have you that it takes to handle things, all the way down to individual nuts and bolts, all the way down to things that are harder to quantify like paint. And at my previous gig, that person was also responsible for handling like parts inquiries from our dealers, which meant that not only did they have to do purchasing, but they also had to do like one-to-one customer engagement and also warranty management and also interacting with the guys on the shop floor to make sure they had everything because they tried to introduce a Kanban system and it never really quite worked. But God
Yeah.
help me, they were trying. And that's just me, and that was just one other person, and that was like 2 people out of the 10 odd people who are doing the work. Everyone wears multiple hats, and everyone's just focused on the here and now. It's very very reactive process. So taking the
I think
time to be able to step back and be proactive about it is really challenging.
yeah, I think like one of the things I find is that that whole time thing. It is one of those things of once you do have a system up and running, it's very much like wow, how did we ever survive without it?
Yeah.
It is a bit. It's a very big step forward. We've worked with businesses where the owner of the business does have that visionary of like let's bring in some tech to help us grow because we can grow at this rate or we can grow at this rate and really accelerate. And you're right. Once you've got that basic framework in place, even like something basic like a marketing CRM system, that opens up so many doors in an ERP system, opens up
Yeah.
so many doors to then be able to automate other areas of system. So then hook into your accounting system to automate a lot of your marketing, to automate, even something as simple as like you said, the social media posts, being
Yeah.
able to plan a month ahead and just do them at Monday morning, whatever it is. So you plan them the week before, Monday morning, you bank them all up and there you go, they're all sorted for the month, and then
Yeah.
you can focus on your job.
Oh,
And it
absolutely.
frees up people to then be able to
It's
have
so
more
much time
capability.
you could be saving. Absolutely. Look, the way I conceive of it is
Yeah,
it's the difference between growth and scaling. So growth is
yeah,
I add one more person and I get one more person's worth of tasks done. But if you are scaling, then I add one more person and that person is able to do the work of 3 people because they have the right tools available to them. But like you were saying, it's this challenge of understanding the tools that are available to you and being able to
Mm.
bring the rest of the SLT along for that journey. Because here's the thing, right? Like, if you work in regional Australia, you probably don't have access to the same talent pool as what you might be getting in metro areas. And that's not to say that any of my colleagues are dumb, not by a long shot. Absolutely not. Hell, I am no more well educated than many of the other people on my team. The only reason why I know half of the things that I do is because I also live perpetually on the internet. Um,
Yeah.
and it's one of the perils of my job is just being forever online. But then here's the
YouTube
thing,
black
like,
hole.
yes, oh, absolutely, absolutely. But then, so in order for you to be able to see, for example, the value that an ERP can offer your manufacturing business, you have to be able to like see what it's doing for other people, which comes down to like a recommendation engine. Like, oh yeah, I spoke to such and he uses this particular thing and he reckons it's amazing. And
Yeah.
or like it never even occurs to you to look at these things, because if you look at a task that you are doing and you go, I need to be able to do this better, chances are you're going to lean towards the tools that you already know. And if you don't operate in that digital space, the tool that you probably know is probably a spreadsheet. Like, the number of
Yeah.
times I've seen people try to hack Microsoft Excel into doing something that it's not meant to do, or at least it can do, but quite frankly, it probably shouldn't be. Or so help me, the people who try to do the same thing except inside of Google Sheets. Like, like no, like I don't want to rag on Google too much, but so help me, like they have a tendency to roll out a product that is like half baked and like third parties will fix it. Yeah, thanks Google. Um, anyway, like sidetrack. Yeah, like so you have people on your team who are they want to do better. So help me, they know they're wearing five hats and they want to look for opportunities to make things better for the business. Because when you are working amongst 30 other people, any change that you make for the better is generally pretty visible. Like
Mm.
as much as information tends to live in its own little distinct silo, when the person who works in, say, inventory works next to the person who works in purchasing, works next to the person who works in marketing, like that change tends to be pretty visible. Um, so yeah, and so people want to try and make their lives better. They want to try and make their lives easier. They want to try and build the business up, because again, like if it's a small business, those changes tend to be much more visible than they are in like an enterprise scale thing where, I don't know, I saved 10% of my time today. Whoop-de-doo, nobody noticed. Um,
Yep.
but yeah, like so yeah, you want to try and make things better. And if you don't know about ERPs, if you don't know about CRMs, if you don't know about PIPs, if you don't know any of those TLAs, then you're going to leach for a spreadsheet and it'll probably get the job done, but it's not going to help in the long run, because ultimately there's a reason why this software exists. Um,
Yeah.
and don't get me wrong, I've known people who know about the existence of these things and they swear black and blue that leaning on them too much is an invitation for trouble. Like, no. Like, if we are smart about it, we can run our entire business on just a Word document and an Excel spreadsheets, and that's enough. And that's fine. Like, if you can make that work, more power to you. But quite frankly, it strikes me as kind of this weird Luddite thinking where, like, okay, like you recognize that a spreadsheet is a valuable piece of tech and it's more, but like a cloud database is too much. Like, why is that the line in your sand? The line in the
Yeah.
sand? Like, why
It's
why is a
familiarity, I would
spreadsheet?
say.
Yeah, like why is running on a spreadsheet like better than running on a grimoire like bloody Ebenezer
Yeah.
Scrooge? Like, you don't have to do that. Like, why draw an arbitrary line in the sand when you could be like you could have an ERP? And sure, they come with they're expensive. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
like again, it comes down to this scaling. And if you do it right, it's not just one person who benefits; it's the entire team. And when,
Yeah.
particularly in the current context where the cost of going business is only going up, like you only have to look at the price of steel over the last 12 months, 24 months to know that it's not getting any easier. And that's not even touching on things like logistics and transport. Like,
Mm.
don't look at the petrol bowser. No one wants to know about that. Or I don't know if you were aware of everyone freaking out about the cost of AdBlue late last year, like because like suddenly the cost of like diesel additive is going up because there's just not
Oh,
enough to
yeah.
go around,
Yeah.
because all the Australian ag industry really needs it, because
Yeah.
their input costs are going up because they don't have enough access to fertilizers and what have you. Like, these things are all expensive. And so I can understand if you were a business owner looking at something like an ERP that's going to cost you 10 grand a year and looking at it really closely. Like, why? When a spreadsheet
Mm.
works fine? Like, okay, yeah, like it's expensive, but you want to look at ways to optimize your business. You want to scale. This is the way to do it. But
Plus, I think something else that is becoming important now is this whole generation four of manufacturing as well, where suppliers are starting to talk to logistics and whatnot electronically. It's not like, hey, we've got a pallet sitting on the back, can you come pick it up? It's a system that shoots off to say, hey, it's got this far in the production process, it'll be ready in 24, 48 hours.
oh
So
yeah,
can you tell me if you've got a driver? And then suddenly the system alerts you if the driver's sick or whatever it is. But there's a lot of that process, a lot of that inefficiency goes out the window. And I'm always looking at that, that, like you said, scale. Like if we are looking to be competitive in the world marketplace, we've got to have this stuff sorted. So an overseas supplier can just tap into our business and go, great, you've got X product which you can ship in the next week. We want to buy that product now. They do their thing, you do your thing, and then it magically just goes off. And the tricky thing is probably just getting it on the truck, but all the other stuff's sorted. So
yeah. I mean, look, I wish that we had the luxury of being able to do things that weren't on the phone. Like if you think about, like, say again, like FMCG, like retail, like how shipping and logistics works in that context. From a customer perspective, it's I order the shirt, I hit standard shipping, and it's done. And from the business side of things, it goes through automatically to TNT or to Ozpost or whoever, who provide a live rate on how much it is and provide, and they just pop a little markup up on the top and it prints out a label and it's job done. Whereas in manufacturing, in B2B, like the scale suddenly breaks because you're not dealing with like a box that you can carry with one hand. You're talking about pallets worth of raw material or finished goods that are literally tons. And putting that on the back of a truck is troublesome, which means you're dealing with largely, particularly out here, you're not dealing with a company per se. You are dealing with Joe Bloggs who owns a truck. So
yeah.
you call Joe Bloggs who owns a truck and he says, oh yeah, I got a load going down to Shepparton. I can squeeze it in. I'll swing by, I don't know, like 4:15, 4:30. Might be a bit late. How about 7? And you're like, what, you think we're just going to wait around indefinitely? It's like,
The
we
forklift
have
driver doing the
lives.
same thing,
We have people who
yeah.
love us. We want to go home. We don't have
Yeah.
time to wait around for a truck, much less leave around multiple people who can help load a truck with a forklift, because again, it's tons worth of stuff. And particularly like with the last gig where I was talking about ag manufacturing, where you're talking about an entire machine that's like 12 meters long and it needs to be strapped to a crane so that it can be lifted onto the back of a flatbed and then strapped down for the sake of safe transport, because so help me if that stuff falls off, it's gonna be trouble. Like there are times when I kind of wish I had insight into how like Toyota works, because I want to know how it works at that scale, so we can go, that's the target, how do we get to that? But at the moment it's not. There are lots of those little niggling parts of the manufacturing side of things that are still very, very manual. And look, it's getting better, because as the prevalence of things like ERPs and CRMs and what have you start to gain traction and people become more familiar with them, then I suspect that expectation is going to change, and you're going to like, everyone else can manage this, why aren't you?
Yeah.
And you're going to go to the people who can, and suddenly that demand is going to go up, and suddenly you don't have that luxury anymore of just being Joey Blogs with a truck who accepts orders via his mobile phone while he is driving. Like, if I'm talking about Storco, I say we like I had anything to do with it. Storco recently invested in something like multi-million dollars worth of plant equipment. Like, they now have, I'm pretty sure, the largest automatic panel bender in Australia. It is a big bit of gear, and they are rearranging their entire business structure in order to take advantage of this. And don't get me wrong, it's hard. Like, anytime you're introducing that level of change into a business, it takes time and effort, because they're having to redo all the designs. We're having to change the way the processes work. like this stuff is hard. But the directors of the company recognize the fact that this particular product takes us 20 minutes to make, and if we invest in this thing, it can take us under 2. Like, you
Wow.
think about, do you think about the impact that that has? Like, we can make a door in 2 minutes that used to take us 20 minutes. And when you consider like some of the projects that we're doing are, I don't know, north of 700 storage units more, the number of doors that we're cranking out for a single project, if you can bring
Wow.
that down, that is incredible. And then if you've just spent multi-million dollars on this plant equipment, you've rearranged your entire business to be more automated and smarter and faster and better, and then you go to book it in to go out to the site, and you're having to get stuff loaded onto a truck from Orange going all the way to Melbourne or Sydney or Brisbane or Toowoomba, or so help me going all the way to Sydney so I can go on a ship to go to New Zealand, which we also do. And you've just spent all this time and money and effort trying to make things smarter and faster and better. And the only way you can get it to leave your compound is you call Joey Blogs, and he's like, oh yeah, and he scratches his beer belly as he trundles along doing 50 k's an hour in a school zone. Yeah, I reckon I'll be there. I reckon about 6:30 is gonna be fine. Like, Joey Blogs, go home. I'm gonna find someone who can do this better.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I guess we've got that side. I guess I like to also look at the marketing side from the branding side as well. I know we've jumped on a lot of manufacturing, even just their websites. I always look at website, because the first thing you do when you tell someone about a company is they pull out their phone. I'll just check out their website. It's rare that's like, I'll just call them and send it, ask them to send a brochure. And your website's probably 90% of the time, 95% of the time, the first port of call for someone to interact with your business.
Mm-hmm.
Now, from that whole branding side, absolutely, there's businesses out there where their websites are just as bad as each other, and it's sort of like you could sort of get away with it. But what happens then is the first person that then takes the leap and goes, you know what, I'm going to get a new website that actually shows the value of our brands. Suddenly they're the market leader. And I'd like to look at I guess businesses wanting to reinvest back into their digital presence. I think primarily start with your website, even if it's just a couple of landing pages that you send traffic to, which I'm getting specifics here, but you can build a landing page for design, build, and content for 2.5K, and then you've got this really nice looking landing page that you can send traffic to, that anyone around the planet can go to that page and go, oh wow, check out this company, they look good. let's at least start inquiring. That starts that whole user journey like you're talking about.
If I didn't know better, I'd say you were advertising a little bit right now.
But it's like, to me, this is where we can, as a collective, start to step forward and say goodbye to the website that your friend built 15 years ago.
Yeah, I would love to put that. So help me, it'd be lovely to put those to bed. So here's the thing. I am very much of the opinion that you need to have a good website in order to exist in the modern world. There's just no getting around it. However, I understand that before you even put pen to paper, digitally speaking, you need to make sure you're doing your due diligence, because the number of times I've seen somebody want to just throw together a website, like they recognize that the one they have is old and it's not working. Build me a new website. Just do it. Just build me a website. Just do it. Just website now, because they've seen the ads for like Wix and Squarespace, and it's like, how easy is building a website? I was like, yeah, like the actual coding side of things, absolutely. Like, I can slap together like something basic that looks nice and shiny in the space of, I don't know, a day, and it costs you next to nothing, because you get like a template that's worth $40 and you're off to the races. Success. But that doesn't say anything about all the research you have to do behind the scenes to make sure that the website is delivering on what your customers need. And
100%.
there's no point in you building a website that showcases how great your business is if it doesn't tell the customer what they need to know. Like, and that stuff
Yeah.
takes time. It takes time to do you do your due diligence. You look at the analytics and you look at the customer journey and you go, right, where are they holding up? They land on they hit our landing page and then they hit the next page, and then where do they go from there? Like at my last gig, we started doing this. We started going down the path of going, right, we need to build a new website because this one's long in the tooth and it's not doing what we needed to do. And I looked at the analytics and I was like, okay, so people go to our homepage and they go to a product page and then they go to the product specifications page and then they go back to the product category. And I was looking at that and go, that tells me one thing. And it tells me that that product category page is not helping them understand what product they need, because you can see time and time again, they go to the product page, they pick a product, they go to the product info, they go to the specifications, they go back to the start, and then go to the next one in the list and repeat, and then back and repeat. And like,
Get
okay,
lost.
yeah, they don't, that page is not telling them what they need to know. So it's not enough just to slap something together and go, hooray, it's got pretty pictures and hyperlinks. Congrats, you got a website. Like, great. But if it's not telling people what they need to know, if it's not helping people understand what they can get from your business, the value that they can get from your business, then what's the point? And when the average order value for a manufacturing firm is, again, tens, if not millions of dollars, like we're talking about like stuff that we do, that's literally projects that are worth millions of dollars. And if you are turning away potential business because your website is not giving them what they need to know, that's, think of how much money you could be flushing down the tubes just because you didn't think about things from the customer perspective. It's just so important, but no one tells you that when it's like a 30-second YouTube pre-roll advertising Wix. So everyone's like, how easy to build a website? Yes, with the world's biggest asterisk following it.
Yeah.
And that's to say nothing of you're trying to build out, say, more technical things like an e-commerce website, where you're not just giving people information before the conversion, but you're giving them information after the conversion as well. So I know, like, I know that in the previous gig, like we were forever fielding calls from people who are like, where's my job up to? Where's my job up to? Where's my job up to? Because like these are people who have bought, I don't know, 60, 80, $100,000 worth of machinery from us, and they quite reasonably want to know where it's going. And here's the thing: if you can build something that helps to give them that information when they need it, why would you not? Like, you think
Mm.
about retail transactions. I go online, I buy myself a pair of pants from the Iconic, and the Iconic tells me, yep, it's going to be shipped on this date, and then they give me a tracking number and I can see where it's up to. It's like, why can we not do that? And particularly if we have invested in a CRM and an ERP, which internally tells us where a project is up to, it's in fab, it's in paint, it's in assembly, it's ready to go. Why can we not give that information to the customer? Because here's the thing: there is actual research to say that operational transparency improves your customer's faith in your business, and in doing so builds trust and sales volumes. Like, you make
Mm.
more money by giving people information. This isn't just gut feeling. Like, this is from like Harvard Business Review. They studied this stuff. They looked at, I think it was they looked at like they looked at travel websites, and the one where it was like telling them what was happening at each stage of that journey instead of it just being like a generic progress bar, that they got more sales traffic, and it built trust, and people were more likely to return to that website for future transactions. There's no reason why we can't apply that same logic to the manufacturing industry, because like, if you're talking about the kind of manufacturing where I buy a thing and then 8 months later it's delivered on the back of a truck, like, think about the number of emails and phone calls that you could dodge simply by giving people that information from the outset when they need it. Like, just like, it's not like it's hard to pick up the phone. No one's saying that. Like,
Yeah.
everyone has an admin team, everyone has secretaries, they all have like, and they reckon that like, oh yeah, this opportunities to build relationships. They're not. Like, if I have just spent $80,000 on a piece of machinery and I feel like I have to chase you for information, that's not building a relationship, that's damaging it.
Yeah.
Like, if I have
100%.
built out an ERP and I have that information and I can plug it into an e-commerce thing where I can give that to you when you need it, oh, like, it's just so much easier for everyone.
use the time saved to take them out for lunch and say thank you or something like that,
Yeah.
So,
Use the time saved to upskill your own staff so that they're not having to wear as many hats and they're not having to like be completely reactive to every single problem, so that you don't have somebody whose job is meant to be purchasing be all that they do just going out and making sure that the latest shipment of fasteners actually got stashed where it's meant to be, instead of it being stashed behind a cupboard somewhere because that's what was easier, and incidentally we just had to move it somewhere because the next truck rolled up because they didn't tell us when they were arriving, because Joey Blogs just turns up when he wants. He just rolls up. Move your stuff. Sorry, there's probably someone listening whose name is Joey Blogs and he's very offended right now.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, Joey. I'm not talking to you specifically.
Yes, yeah, it's a made up name. So look, I know we could probably talk for hours and hours and hours on this this content. We normally wrap up around about this point. Would you have any sort of final words that you'll want to say for those who are in manufacturing land and maybe holding back, or who we love speaking to the people who are eager to go out there and maybe just don't know what the next step is.
Yeah. I know that working in manufacturing, then like your capital costs are always the most expensive things, followed very closely by human costs. However, I would always, if it ever possible, invest in your staff, because again, like speaking for myself and speaking for my colleagues, the number of times where we've had to solve a problem by just Googling it and figuring it out, like it only gets you so far. If you have people on your team who have the understanding of the market, who can understand the tools that are available to them, who can understand what they are doing within the broader context of the business and how what they do has knock-on effects for the rest of the team, it means that everyone is more invested in what they're doing, and you have the right people who are helping to build your business. That's not a cost, it's an investment.
Yeah, absolutely. And the final question, your opinion, will Australian manufacturing ever return to the glory days of the 60s with the help of marketing?
Well, given that I wasn't around in the 60s, I couldn't tell you specifically. However, it's encouraging. It's encouraging. I would love to see Australian manufacturing become a bigger thing, which quite frankly, looking at the last couple of decades, is basically starting from zero. So how well can you do that? Probably. I reckon we can make that happen. I reckon, the growing need for automation, the growing role of people being able to contribute, and certainly the increased focus on sovereign capacity means that we have opportunities to build what we might have lost and exceed it by a fairly significant margin. It's just a matter of identifying the right industries and the right products and the right people.
Watch this space. Speaking of space, aeronautics, space, those industries are taking off at the moment. So I'm really excited. Well, excuse the pun.
Aeronautics is taking off.
Yeah. But you look at the stats, and we're starting to produce space products now, and also
absolutely
all sorts of crazy stuff. It's great. So
there's a lot of opportunity out there. There's a lot of smart people. It's just a matter of being able to pair those smart people with other people who can help make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you very much again, Tim. Thanks for your knowledge. I know there's way more we could tap into. We'll probably get you back on again, have another chat about good old Joe Blogs and how he's traveling.
My next gig is going to be working in for transport, and they're going to be looking at me with dirty looks the entire time.
Yeah, that's right. You're the guy. Thank you very, very much again. For all our listeners, keep a lookout for our next podcast. If you're in manufacturing, please knock on our door. We love to have guests on as well. And thank you again, Tim.
It's been a pleasure.